Welcome to this online session. Today we will be talking about nutritional requirement for adults, which is part of the certificate program in food and nutrition, course 2, your food and its utilization, block 4, unit 13. I am your program coordinator, Professor Deeksha Kapoor, from the discipline of nutritional sciences, Indira Gandhi National Open University. So learners, so far you have gone through the nutritional needs through the life cycle. We started with pregnancy, where we learnt about the requirement during the fetal period. We moved on to infancy and then to preschool age, school age, adolescent age. And now we will talk about the nutritional requirement for adults. In this session, the main focus will be understanding what are the nutritional needs for adults. In fact, what is the period of adulthood? How do gender, occupation, age influence the nutrient needs? And what are the ways we can adopt to meet the nutrient needs for adults in general and particularly for different socio-economic group individuals? So let's get started by first understanding the period of adulthood. We have seen that the initial years of life, starting from the fetal period till adolescent, are characterized by rapid growth. These are the rapid growth periods. So by the time the adolescent period is completed, most of the growth development would have been completed. So the period beginning from 20 years up to 60 years or more, as long as we live, is actually the period of adulthood. It is a vast period. Therefore, many times we tend to categorize it as early adulthood, middle adulthood, and elderly. So, the period of early adulthood, which we may consider from say 19 or 20 years to about 39 years, and then the middle adult period, and then 60 years and above, we tend to cover them as elderly or in the elderly age group. Now, during adulthood, the basic feature is that most of the growth and development has stopped. So by the time the adolescent period is completed, by that age, the growth development is complete and the maximum attainment of the body is achieved. Thereafter, the body retains the capacity to replace the worn out tissues. Well, there is no growth and development, but you would notice as part of the normal metabolic process, there is tear and wear going on gradually, and to accommodate for these tear and wear and other changes in the body, we need to have sufficient nutrients to maintain the body functions. And then as we age, as age increases, there is excessive breakdown of the tissue. There are other metabolic changes happening. The metabolic rate as such decreases, so that adults' need for the nutrients, particularly the calories, they start going down. We will look at all these aspects here in this session as well as in the next session on nutrient need during elderly. Therefore, what is the importance of nutrition then in adulthood? We basically need enough nutrition or nutrients to maintain the body functions. We need nutrients to prevent the development of diseases such as the heart disease, diabetes, which may occur due to our faulty eating habits or dietary habits which we may be practicing. Therefore, what are the nutrient needs then? Let us get started with that. You would realize that the nutrient need for adults actually are influenced by age, by the gender, and by the activity level of the adult, whether sedentary, moderate, or heavy work. So we will look at each of these factor individually and how they impact their requirement? Well, there are changes in the nutrient need or the recommended allowances based on age. As age increases, you would see that the metabolic rate slowly decreases, so that the adults need less calorie to meet the basal energy need of the body. What do we mean by the basal energy? If you recall, we've learned about it earlier in this course, that the basal metabolic rate is the amount of energy per unit of time that a person needs to keep the body functioning at rest. So the basal energy required to carry out the involuntary activities such as the beating of the heart, the breathing process which continues 24/7, the digestive system works non-stop, the temperature is maintained in the body, all these voluntary activities, the basal metabolism continues non-stop and we need energy. But with age, these basal metabolic or the metabolism decreases, because of which the energy requirements also come down. So as a thumb rule, for every year above 30 years or after 30 years, we generally tend to subtract 10 calories per year for men and 7 calories per year for women. So if you were to take a decade, say from 30 years to 40 years, you would notice that roughly about 100 calories are reduced, or an individual may need 100 calories less if it is a man and about 70 calories less if it is a woman. Therefore, with age, the nutrient needs, particularly the calorie needs, are reduced. We will look at the nutrient need for the elderly later in the next session. Now let us see how gender or the sex of an individual influences the nutrient need. We have already talked about the reference man and a reference woman. With a reference body weight, say for an adult reference man, we consider 65 kg as the reference body weight within the age group of say 19 to 39 years of age. For a woman, it is 55 kg. So what do you notice? That women require less energy and other nutrients than men because they are smaller in size and lighter. The body weight is less for the women. The body size is smaller and lighter. Hence, the energy requirement for women are lower than that for men of the same age. Further, the men have more muscle mass, the body composition, as compared to women who have more of fatty tissues in their body. And the muscle mass is more metabolically active, meaning it requires more energy. So men have more energy requirement as compared to women, and women have more of adipose tissue or fatty tissue. Why? Because even this is a biological process. We know that the woman has the role in birth of the child and the nurturing of the child thereafter. Therefore, they have more of fatty tissues to provide for the growth of the infant during lactation. So, women have more of adipose tissue and therefore which is metabolically less active as compared to the muscle mass in men. Therefore, the requirement for men is higher than that of the women. Let us move further and look at what happens to the minerals and the vitamin requirements. Are they the same for men and women? Since we have seen that many vitamins like the B complex vitamin, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, their requirement are directly linked to the energy requirement. We need these nutrients to metabolize the food to obtain energy. Therefore, when the energy requirement for men is more, the requirement for these vitamins increases for men as compared to the women. What about minerals like iron, calcium and other minerals? Let us start with iron requirement. The requirement for iron in case of women is more than that for men, because women lose some amount of iron through menstruation, and that is why we need to give higher amounts. So if you may recall learning about iron as a nutrient and its requirement, we talked about the estimate requirement of 15 milligrams for women as compared to 11 milligrams for men. For calcium, however, the requirement for both men and women remain at 1000 milligrams per day. It is the same. And now when we come to the other vitamins, the vitamin A, C or folic acid, folate, we notice that the requirement is more for an adult man as compared to the women. However, for folic acid, you have noticed that the requirement may grow up for women in the case of physiological conditions like pregnancy and lactation. Therefore, this is how the nutrient need is influenced by the gender or the sex of the individual. The third factor which contributes to the nutrient need is the activity, the physical activity level. The requirements vary with the kind of physical work or activity individuals engage in. There are three different physical activity categories. We have already talked about these three categories: the sedentary or light activity level, we've talked about the active or moderately active lifestyle, and we've talked about the vigorous or vigorously active lifestyle. Let us see how these three different physical activity levels influence the energy levels in particular. The more the amount of physical activity, you would notice the higher is the energy requirement. Therefore, a sedentary individual who is indulging in less strenuous work, for that individual, whether man or women, their energy needs would be less. For example, a sedentary man would require 2110 kilocalories per day as compared to a moderately active man who may require 2710, and the same individual, when performing strenuous activity, their requirement may go up to 3470 kilocalories. Likewise, the requirement for energy changes for the women. The sedentary lifestyle women would need lesser energies, 1660 calories, as compared to a moderately active women whose requirements may go up. Therefore, physical activity level is a very important factor. Who is sedentary, who is moderate, and who is a heavy worker? These distinctions we need to be very clear. So, for a sedentary or light activity lifestyle, all occupations that do not demand much physical effort, or they are not required to walk long distances, they do not exercise or participate in sports regularly, they spend most of their leisure time sitting or standing with little body displacement, they get categorized under sedentary or light activity lifestyles. On the other hand, individuals who indulge not in so strenuous activity but involve in more energy expenditure as compared to sedentary lifestyle. For example, an individual has a sedentary lifestyle but may be indulging in gymming or exercising for long periods wherein the energy expenditure is more. Such an individual can move from a sedentary to a moderate lifestyle. And the third category is the vigorous or vigorously active lifestyle. Here the people engage regularly in strenuous work or in strenuous leisure activities for several hours. So, to help you understand this, let us take a break for a minute, and we would want you to now categorize yourself. Where do you put yourself? In which category, in which lifestyle you would fit in? Would you be a sedentary lifestyle individual, a moderate lifestyle, or a vigorously active lifestyle? Because depending on the kind of activities you indulge in, your needs for energy and other nutrients may increase depending on the physical activity. So, let us look at the examples. You have been able to categorize yourself for sure. Let us look at the other examples. For example, any teacher, office worker, or an executive, clerk, typist who indulge in work which requires sitting at one place, displacement of the body is very limited, or housewives doing light household chores, they all are sedentary lifestyle individuals. So, if you are one of them who are or who is involved in activities where there is less expenditure of energy, most of your work involves sitting on a table and doing, you are a sedentary lifestyle individual. Who is a moderate worker or a physical activity, performing physical activity which gets categorized as moderate work? Well, servants at home, house cleaners, masons, construction workers, they who indulge in activity where the energy expenditure is more than what they would in case of the sedentary lifestyle, they get categorized as moderately active workers. And usually women who are in the agricultural sector, who have to walk long distances to fetch water, fuel, wood, etc., they are categorized as moderately active individuals. The third category is heavy workers, agricultural laborers who work for several hours daily, individuals who walk long distances over rugged terrains, often carrying heavy loads, rickshaw pullers, mine workers, coolies, they get categorized as the heavy workers or vigorously active lifestyle individuals. Depending on the physical activity you perform, therefore, your requirements will vary. Now that you have understood how age, how gender, and how the physical activity influences your need, what is the next thing we need to consider? How do we meet these nutrient needs? Well, an adequate, well-balanced diet will help meet the need for adults. And what is a balanced diet? We have already defined balanced diet in many of our sessions. You know, a balanced diet is one which would provide variety of foods like cereals, pulses, milk, green leafy vegetables, other vegetables, fruits, fats and oils in the diet, so as to meet the nutrient needs depending on the activities you perform. Therefore, to be able to provide a balanced diet for adults, keeping the age in mind, keeping the activity level in mind, therefore becomes a great challenge. So, to help you understand how can you plan a balanced diet for different activities, what you see on chart is the portions of each of these food groups. Suppose if you were to take cereals and millets, if you take one portion as say 30 grams, therefore if it is a sedentary man, he may need to take about 12 to 13 portions of cereals to meet their energy needs. A woman may need only 9 portions of these cereals. Likewise, you would notice when it comes to fats, which also provide energy, the if you take 5 ml as one portion, so a sedentary man may need 5 portions to meet the energy requirement, and as the activity level increases, the requirement for both cereals and the fats will go up. So understanding how much amount we need for each of these food groups will go a long way in planning or working out a balanced diet for adults. This is a typical food pyramid where at the base you have cereals and cereal food products, because cereals are the basic staple which provides the energy requirements you have learned so far. You have seen that about 45 to 65% of the total energies must be provided from cereals and cereal products. Therefore, if you were to take a sedentary adult man, these balanced diets guide us. These are provided by the ICMR, the Indian Council of Medical Research, which gives us the recommendations. They give us the portion sizes, that how much of cereals, how much of the protein giving foods like pulses, meat, milk you need to include, how much of the fruits and vegetables which help protect us from disease, how much each individual must include in their diet so as to remain healthy. So understanding this food pyramid, and in terms of portions or in terms of amounts, you must get yourself acquainted to them, and following these balanced diets, you can ensure a balanced diet for any individual. So what do you see? Say for an adult man, sedentary man, you know that the requirement is about 2110. So including about 275 grams of cereals and about 30 grams of nuts, oil seeds can help meet the requirement for the energy requirements for this individual. But look at the fruits, look at the green leafy vegetables and other vegetables. You would notice that these amounts standard or uniform as we go higher in the physical activity level. Let us move to the moderate active individual. You would notice that the requirement increases for cereals. It will go up. For fats and oils also the requirement will grow up so as to accommodate for the increased needs for energy. However, the fruits, the other vegetables, the green leafy vegetables, they need to be included in adequate amounts so as to protect the body from different diseases and provide for the functions of the body. Likewise, the balanced diets have been given for sedentary women as well as for moderate women and other. These are only simple guidelines. You can adapt them. You can increase or decrease the amounts so as to meet the needs. It will require a little practice on your part to be able to decide, but the thumb rule is simple, that the maximum energy needs to be provided from cereals. Therefore, if you need to increase or decrease the energy needs, you may need to consider the cereals or the fat food group to be able to accommodate. So like this, we plan balanced diets for whether it is a moderately active woman or moderately active man or a sedentary individual. So follow and understand these balanced diets which have already been included in your course material. Besides this, another aspect which is important is how do we meet the nutritional need of people with varying food budgets? Well, we are aware of the requirements, but the food budgets can sometimes influence the kind and amount of food we select. For example, we've talked about the balanced diet and we talked about the cereal and cereal products in terms of portions, that if we take 30 grams as one portion, we saw that we need to take, say for a sedentary woman, we may need about 200 grams So roughly about 8 portions. However, when we are talking about income, you would realize that the income individual who belongs to low income group, majority of the income or what they earn goes in actually obtaining food. So 80 to 90% of their income actually goes in purchasing the food, and under those conditions the cereals are the major food group which provide them energy. Why? Because cereals are the staple. Whatever is grown in those regions are what is consumed. They may be cheaper also. So likewise, your income will influence what kind of food you would purchase. For example, a laborer may not be able to afford oil or the refined oils or the desi ghee and other such oil. They may need to look at the cheaper versions. So let us see how food choices or selection differs for economic level. If you look at cereals and cereal products, you would notice that the low income group individual may buy food from the fair price shop or the ration shops which are available, or the staple which is easily available. In the west they may eat jawar, bajra. In the north, wheat is the staple which is cheap. Even within that there are different varieties. So the cheaper varieties will be picked up by an individual of the low income group. Middle income may buy medium cost varieties, and a high income has more freedom to choose from a variety of cereals. What we need to remember, however, is that nutrients from cereals, whether it is cheap or expensive, are the same. They will provide us energy. They will provide us the B complex vitamins which we have talked about. Therefore, whether you are having bajra, jawar, which can be more nutritious sometimes than having a refined wheat flour chapati. So understanding about the food and what they contain and then purchasing will go a long way in being able to select the right kind of food within your food budget. What about the protein foods? Protein foods like milk, pulses, meat, yes, they are expensive food and there is great variation in this group. So how do the poor people include these foods? The middle income, what kind of changes they do? Well, you would notice that particularly for the pulses, individuals may vary the number of servings they may include in the diet. The kind and amount of food, for example, in case of milk, an individual from a lower socioeconomic group may be able to afford the toned or a double toned milk as compared to the whole milk. So these kind of the kind and amount of milk which will be selected. Similarly, for meat and meat products, there are variety of foods. They can be dry fish available and other foods available. So selecting depending on the income, one will have to practice. Even at low cost, we can include servings of this food group. What about vegetables and fruits? Minimum amount we need to include. We cannot restrict the vegetables and fruits. We may restrict other foods, but including seasonal varieties of food can help us meet our needs for vitamin minerals by including these fruits. What we can do, we can restrict the choices by including high amount of edible portions. For example, beans, 95% of the bean, the portion is edible as compared to peas, where only 50% is edible. We pay almost the same price, but we get half the amount. Therefore, the choice of food and variety will increase as we move from middle to high income. The higher income can choose from any variety. What about oil, fats and sugars? Well, the lower income may need to buy refined oils or may need to obtain the sugar oil from fair price shops. use minimum amount when budget is limited, and as income increases, butter, desi ghee, these may replace the cheaper vanaspati and other cheaper variety. But restrict the intake of these foods because they can impact on health. We know that today obesity and heart diseases are the major culprit, but adequate amount to meet the energy requirement is needed. Finally, home produced foods. Grow fruits and vegetables in kitchen garden. So for an low income individual, encouraging them to grow fruits, vegetables in the kitchen garden, keeping poultry or dairy cattle, or preserving food when they are in season, they will go a long way in meeting their needs within their budget. So use these without incurring excessive cost. Therefore, we have in this session looked at various aspects of adulthood. First, we talked about what is the period of adulthood, what are the nutrient needs, and the nutrient needs we learned is there to maintain the body functions basically, energy need and consequent requirements for thiamine, niacin, riboflavin vary largely with the kind of activities you carry on, and the requirement for women for certain nutrients is more as compared to men, and we need to judiciously select the food keeping the food budget in mind. Hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you.